Stay right there. What are you waiting for? Kill them! Kill them both! No, wait a minute. Is it money you're after? I'll give you as much as you want.
May the saints forgive you, because I won't.
But I sound okay, right?
Yeah, your mic sounds great. Okay, so we're recording. Alex, what's up?
Hey, Jin. Hey, and that nice to be on your show finally after a few months going back and forth.
No, it's great. I mean, you just you let it happen. You let it be magic. You kind of just wait for the right moment. So that's what happened, and here we are.
Definitely. Yeah. So I'll just introduce myself. So my name is Alex Rivera. So if you're not aware of me, I mean, I've been working on a lot of online occult content, esoteric stuff. I did work with the another author by the name of Tracy Twyman, and we co-wrote a book called Baphomet, the Temple Mystery Unveiled. But ever since then, I've been working on other stuff, including other books. I did publish a book called The Sun Lady Unveiled back in 2020. Another book called The Laurel Turns Green back in 2022. So right now I'm working on another project that I might put out this pretty soon here. It's called The Infinity Working. So yeah, just want to preface on that.
Awesome. Well, I want you to talk about your last two books that you've put out in 2020 and 2022. And just give a brief overview of what you're thinking about, or what your thinking was in writing them, and sort of just the broad themes of it, the broad contours of it.
Sure. So the first book I wrote was called The Sun Lady Unveiled, and so around that time, this is back around 2016. There was a lot of hoopla going on around this celestial sign that connects to the woman clothed in the sun in the Book of Revelation, chapter 12. And there was a lot of online chatter about the celestial sign that was supposed to happen in 2017. So I wanted to I wrote a blog post, kind of explaining all the different occult and religious synchronicities connecting to this celestial sign that was supposed to happen in the heavens in September of 2017. And then it wound up becoming this really big book. So I took a blog post I wrote for my blog called theaeon.com. Then I wrote this really large book. So it does connect with that Revelation chapter 12 and the rest of the Book of Revelation. So yeah, so in that book I was just describing how this figure of the woman clothed with the sun connects to different figures the Gnostic Sophia. The Sun Lady is a term coined by an author, another scholar by the name of Margaret Parker, and so that's where I got the name. But I do connect with this figure of the Sun Lady, connect with Gnostic Sophia, the Holy Spirit, or the Church. I mean, that's where the Shekinah glory, in the Kabbalah. So it all kind of connects to those different figures. But yeah, so So I published that. This is like, and I published that. This is right around the time of COVID, when COVID first hit back in 2020. So that was interesting. Synchronicity, right? But yeah.
Well, it's interesting simply because in like something I've discussed before is that maybe COVID was a bit of an unveiling for us plebes, us regular or people who were maybe into mysticism or magic or occultism or esoterica, but hadn't quite passed the we hadn't reached the far shore yet. So I think it was an interesting time, very metaphysically interesting, very astrologically interesting, probably a very good time for art production, to be honest. And so I empathize, and I think it's great that you put it pen to paper.
Yeah, it was almost like a divine homework assignment. I don't even know how to describe it. But I get into like the history of like, I mean, not only the Book of Revelations, but a lot of the like different lore connected to that figure, but not just the woman clothed the sun, but the figure of like Saint Michael. I get into who the red dragon is, how it connects to like the Leviathan or the Demiurge from Gnosticism. So, and then I get into like Saint Michael, how it connects to like other figures like Mithras, or even Zoroaster, surprisingly enough, Enoch, Metatron, and then I get into like all the more like the occult kind of subtle themes connected to them in the Book of Revelation, how it does connect to like the Kabbalah, for example. So it is, I mean, it is there, but I mean, well, to a more like orthodox reader, that those connections might be kind of like heretical. It is interesting though, nevertheless. It is there.
Well, people have described my show as a intermediate magical podcast, or like for the intermediate like magician. So I don't think anyone who's listening to this will find it heretical. I talk a lot about Kabbalah.
Sure.
To a large degree, and I definitely think that the Tree of Life is a great, and we spoke about this pre-recording, it's just, I think it's a great map. The map is not necessarily the territory, as the saying goes. Shout out to Matt. But I definitely I think it's a great map. I think it's like a common language between people, between traditions, that is the same thing, but you're just kind of you're code switching. It gives you a path to code switch between different systems.
For sure. I mean, the Kabbalah does connect with like, other systems of, the tarot and alchemy or what have you. So, I mean, it's very complicated, but, well, yeah, it's complicated, but it's also like, it is like in a way of kind of empowering if you like really know how to like, use it to your advantage. Like, for example, there's like, the middle pillar of Israel Regardie. And so I mean, I have the book in front of me, but then there's another book that I'm kind of looking into. It's called Path Working, a Kabbalah Guide to Empowerment Initiation by Ted Andrews. That's pretty interesting as well. So I mean, you can use it to your advantage for sure. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, but going back to you, yeah, I mean, it's like it's a very it's always developing system that you can kind of like even add to it in a way. But I mean, but really, it's like it's a representation of the universe, So it's it's like a map of how the divine like kind of like filters out into the cosmos, basically. So
Yeah, very well put. I completely agree with that. You can build out the tree, as you said, but it's also a representation of you, like the micro, and then it's also a representation of the outer, like the macro, and then it's also a representation of what all the kids call the mind palace.
dolls.
So I think it's a beautiful a way to express something that is very difficult to express, and it's found deeply throughout every single Old Testament and New Testament. If people think that there's not Kabbalah in the Bible, I mean, you really don't understand. Like the Bible is a metaphysical text first and foremost, whether you believe in its cosmology or not. I'm not a Christian, so I don't really have like concrete beliefs like that. I think you kind of maybe garnered from this, yesterday our conversation, Alex, but I am very flexible, so I can just think of things as like a cosmological system. It's no big deal to me. Like it's so I just take it like, yes, it's expressing a mystical ideas deeply within both Old Testament and New Testament. And there's a linkage between them and how they're understood. Now, is that perfect? Is there every like paradox resolved? This is often a question for Kabbalah practitioners, is like, how do you resolve the paradox? And the paradox can be the way the light travels through the past, or the way that you interact with the Sephira, or the ways that things manifest in the world, whatever it is, or your own mind. Usually that's what it is. It's things of your own mind. So, it just that's really the magician's journey. I think it's the resolution of those paradoxes that he or she sometimes create in the world. So, but it's deep in the Bible, and the Bible is just like a tool. So I know that you're cool with this, and like everyone who listens to like this show would be cool with it because they often hear me refer to it. But I think that I think I think once you pass like learning to tie your shoes, you can accept that the Bible is a metaphysical hermeneutic, or a tool, or the word in some expressions, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, there's like, the Psalms is very Kabbalistic. Like even like this book in front of me, like I have it's called The Path Working by Ted Andrews. I mean, all the different spheres sort of connect to like a different psalm. So you list them.
Yes.
So how to, so when you activate each Sephira, you do use a psalm.
Yes.
So it's so yeah. So I mean, is there a biblical basis to the Kabbalah? I mean, yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
Yeah. It's the Kabbalah is just like the exegesis, the explanation. Like the that's all the Zohar really was, is like just the explanation of the inner sort of mysticism. Right. So there's the two kinds of the main two kinds of Jewish mysticism, which are the Merkaba mysticism and the Hekala mysticism. But there's multiple streams, just like there's multiple streams of Kabbalah. Like I've discussed Lurius, I've discussed Ramak on the show. So it's just like just because something has negative expressions in the world does not make it inherently bad. And in fact, like what you're saying, like those Psalms, that's very interesting because a lot of the Psalms are imprecatory or cursive. So really interesting when you're thinking about like what people's perceptions of the Bible are. They always think it's like, oh, it's like just like love and light and all this. And but like once you're really into it, you realize it's a lot more there's just a lot more meat to it. It's just a lot more substantive.
Right. So it's kind of, you can think of like the Psalms as like the God spell book in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you won't really get like too much like like if if you're pouring like a regular spell, you might experience some negative consequences from doing that. But I mean, with like the Psalms, you don't really experience that kind of like self-retribution, or not self-retribution, but what I'm trying to say. Something like like a negative feedback loop, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But like in the Psalms, you're supposed to like read them out if you want like something to change in your life, and just you're supposed to like read them out like daily and just see what happens. But you're also supposed to just, like meditate on the inner meanings of the psalm to like really get what it's saying, So like, for example, there's like the healing psalm of Psalm 102 that you can use, or if like you're dealing with like a negative spirit, you can use Psalm 68 for another thing. So I mean, there's a book called I'm sure you're aware of it. It's called Power of the Psalms by Anna Reba. So she gets into like how to use the Psalms in a magical way, I guess. But I mean, but you don't have to do it that way. But but you still use the Psalms. from any Bible, I guess, right? But but I mean, but going back to like the Bible, I mean, how it connects to so like the Bible connects to like of course the Kabbalah for sure, but like with the Psalms, it's sort of like breaks open doors for you in a way. So
Yeah.
so it is there for sure.
Well, this Psalm 119, right? That's like the master psalm, they say. The master key
Mhm.
psalm, some would say. So it has all the Hebrew letters. Each little verse in it lists a Hebrew letter before it. So that's something that you would do preparatory work is like read the master psalm thing. How I used to do it was like I think I would read it 3 times a day. Like I would try and read it like morning, noon, and night. And then you sort of like study the letters, like you're saying, like meditate on them. Each letter has a color, has an element, has like not just magical, but just like biblical associations, like associations with God, with like a conceptual idea of him or whatever that is for people. And you kind of you like the title of the book, you journey through the paths of light, and you are the light, and your consciousness is the light, and you kind of penetrate the densities. As I have been obsessed, 100%.
Yeah, so like now for the negative connotation to like the Kabbalah, I mean, it's there, you know. So like a lot of the Jews and Judaism has been kind of like demonized for a while. So they associate the Kabbalah with like evil or the Klifa and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, but there's different strains of it. There's like there's Hermetic Kabbalah, there's the Lurianic Kabbalah, there's different variants of that. So the Zoharic Kabbalah, I mean, um, but I think like a lot of the early Christian Gnostics kind of use a form of that, in my opinion. Um, I mean, I think they were aware of that system because a lot of the if you look at like the Aeonology of like different uh teachers like Valentinus, he kind of gets into like the tree as well in his own way. He talks about the Aeons, right? But they're very similar to like the Sephiroth, so the tree of life. So it's there. The connections are there too. But I mean, where does like but the tree of life system, I think, is very like I think it's even pre-Judaism. I think it connects to like ancient Babylon, Egypt, Atlantis. Want to go that route, but 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 anyway, but yeah, I mean, going back to the Sun Lady. So I mean, yeah, it is still available on Amazon. You can purchase it or you can purchase it directly from my website, the aeoni.com. Now, my newest book called The Infinity Working, I get into that, which is basically all about my research into like the Kabbalah, how it connects to the Book of Revelation. So you can think of that as like sort of like a sequel to the Sun Lady Unveiled. So in the Infinity Working, uh, you can find that on Substack, on my Substack. But I mean, a lot of my posts are free, but some of them, but the rest of I actually think the first 8 or 9 articles you can read for free, but the rest of them are behind a paywall because I want to kind of build like a little subscriber base, I guess. But but in that, yeah, I get to a lot more in depth of I think what all this stuff means. So it's very complicated.
Well, why don't we? Because people have praised you, and like people that I know, have praised you for your in-depth knowledge of Gnosticism in particular, which we had a far-ranging, about a long discussion about privately, and then also, so you touched on Aeonology. So, as someone who has been discussing for at least a year this Aeon of the Daughter concept that I've kind of constructed, I wondered if you could discuss Aeonology, what you see as the current Aeon, and if you have any opinions on the different Gnostic groups and how they sort of manifest in contemporary culture? I know that's a big one.
Yeah, that's a really big one. So yeah, so tell me more. Well, let me ask you what. So tell me more about this Aeon of the Daughter. What is that exactly?
So it's basically the Norea from the Epinoia of Norea, or the Hypostasis of the Archons. Um, but we also have this idea in Tantra. We also have this idea in Shrivija Tantra. So that's more of an Indian, a non-Buddhist Tantra, but a non-dual Tantra as well. And then we also have this idea in Buddhist Tantra, this idea of the Vajra Kumari, or the Diamond Thunder Daughter. So I found it very striking in some ways that certain parallels I was seeing, certain parallels in the structure of the solar and lunar calendars, the 60 year cycle. Obviously, the Book of Enoch also uses a six kind of like derivative, six derivative. With the solar cycle, and there's also a Tibetan calendar that Tibetan Tantra calendar that uses that 60-year cycle, and then there's Shrivija texts that use 70, and then there's other Tantric texts that use 80. So it depends, but they're often talking about something very similar, like very similar to our old conceptual magical idea, Yadhe Vavhe, which is the king, queen, the prince, and the daughter. Well, as you were saying, there's a lot of esoterica that relates to the mother, or the Shekinah, or the Holy Spirit, or, Mary, or the Babylon, or however you want to see her. There's obviously a lot of written text theology that deal with the Father. And we have a whole sort of like institutional cosmology of the Son. So we're missing one. Swastika has 4 quadrants, so therefore the world must have 4 quadrants. So at least that's how it is in Buddhism. So there's a quadrant for the daughter. So I just thought who she is. There's a Buddhist Dakini goddess called Kurakula. Her name has 2 Ks. It's 22. Yes, it is the same in Tantra. All magic numbers generally throughout the systems correlate. There's this idea that she dances in the heatless fire. There's a correspondence in Kabbalah to path 22, which is the path that it sort of is a very dynamic path that is from Chesed to Gevurah to Tiferet. So it kind of has 3 connections in one. So she is love. That's kind of the conceptual idea, is that she is love. So she resolves the paradox, as we were speaking of before, paradox of the sun. She kind of the disharmony, the excess heat, the sort of production of the negative qualities of synthesis. So that's what it is. But it's really just love. Like if you want to take it in more of a conceptual idea, it's love. It's lamed, mem, dalet. Love as the cause of knowledge.
Right. Going back to what you were saying about Norea. So Norea is a figure that you see in like different texts, like, the hypostasis of the Archons or the thought of Norea. So, but you don't really see her in Gnosticism. You don't really see her in any other tradition, I don't think. But,
well, there's obviously a lot of Ptolemaics who kind of think that this expansion outward from the, the basic magical formula of earth, air, fire, and water, it's not totally unheard of. There's a book from the 1950s called Crossing the Abyss and the Aeon of the Daughter. They're the goddess of Hod, Mercury. She, like, what would be Mercury or Hod, but the higher kind of expression, the star, maybe you could maybe even say Sirius. She has a daughter. So I just thought that's a very interesting sort of thing, because it's a lot like, it expresses a lot like how it would if you mapped it out on the tree. Right? Like there is, like, that pillar is considered to be the mother's pillar, although in certain kinds of Tantra, you could express all the Sephira with a specific tree. They have their own tree. It's called the Mahavijja system. So there's 10 or 11, just like Kabbalah, depending on how many, which text you're using, excuse me. And then there's also 22 path system, and then there's also a 32 path system, again, depending on what text you use. And there's also a deity that corresponds directly to those numbers and those paths, which is Ganapati, which is the elephant-headed god. So
Mhm.
all this being said, and he is similar to Baphomet in some ways. I did discuss this with Zach Schumacher a little bit. So he is the sort of king of aggregation. So the house would be a perfect place for him, and obviously of doorways, at least the outer doorway. And so the daughter is kind of like this idea of the Shekinah, the mind of the father, so
Mhm.
time, and the wisdom of the mother, so emptiness and love, but not contained in the preconceptions of like the mother as the whore or the virgin. Sort of like somewhere in between. It's like neither nor. It's very Buddhist. At least that's how I presented it.
Gotcha. So that's really interesting. So the Anna daughter, wow. So, well, let's talk about Noria a little bit because no one really talks about her.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, I think we're the only ones that are actually talking about her, right? For a while. But anyway, so Noria, she's like this, the daughter of Adam and Eve, right?
Yes.
And
She
you
can
don't really see
also
her in the
be the
Bible.
daughter of Noah. She can
Oh yeah.
do that. So that's really interesting in terms of what you wrote. Good Enoch. It just
Hmm.
series with Bobby and Marks and Nick. We did like 3 books of Enoch, which are not even related texts, but they present kind of this cosmology, and Enoch 2 specifically is about sort of the priests of Noah, the line of Noah. So that does sort of make sense because in her story with as the daughter of Noah, she burns down the ark twice.
Yeah. Yeah, right. So but they kind of like so see Noah as like almost like a pawn of the demiurge, I guess, or Yaldabaoth or something like that. But so they have a very like so like they have a tendency to like sort of like invert the hermeneutic, I guess, in a way. But I mean but the understandings are a little bit more deeper in my opinion, if you look at like, the Hypostasis, the Archons, that's really good, really interesting writing.
I agree. I agree. It's a great text. And I think that there are interesting features in it. And Nuria does make sort of a surprise, or like maybe not a surprise, but an interesting appearance where she kind of puts into question the maybe even reality of the text itself.
Hey, so, and I think like in one point, like one angel, like it was Elith that visits her and like warns her about against the Archons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think Elith is one of the can be connected to one of the angels, the 4 archangels, in
He's higher, actually.
Gnosticism.
He's a little higher.
Okay.
But interesting because the Gnostics seem to take that early Judaic view where, yes, the archangels could be utilized, say, in ritual magic, but then there's kind of like this skepticism a little bit of them. Like, what's the point of what's the point of Metatron and looking higher? What's the point of Enoch and Melchizedek and looking higher? Because the archangels aren't really, they're not the highest in Jewish angelology. They're only the fourth, they're only quaternary angels, like angels of the fourth quarter, right? So I just think I think the Gnostics approach it as like they have maybe higher intelligences, or higher sort of maybe it's a higher principality of angels.
Right. So, well, I mean, if you look at like Dionysus, the Aprograde, or I can't pronounce the name, but he wrote like a book called The Celestial Hierarchy. So it connects like Christianity to like Neoplatonic stuff, philosophy, right? But he talks about the 10 uh hierarchies of the angels, but you can also kind of connect that to like the 10 Sephiroth too.
Yes.
So
Yes. That's what's really interesting, is that I think you touch on something really fundamental, Alex, is that a lot of people do not understand that there is a hierarchy in the multiverse, if you want to call it that. There is there are different intelligences, angels, identities, faces, deity names, colors, conceptual ideas at every density, every single density, different thoughts you may have, different desires, cliches, as we would call them in Buddhism, maras, delusions we would have. So all of that appears before people. And so they not only do they get the angels mixed up and not understand that the angels don't always have they're not always aligned with like human wants and desires. So, their expression of things that people ask of them might also not reflect a human understanding of the world.
Right. So now going back to what you were asking earlier about, what Aeon we're in, I don't know. I think we might be in the Aeon of Horus, maybe. But the thing is, just like I remember. Well, let's talk about Tracy Twyman a little bit. I know that we might get into trouble.
Well, I've done a whole series, as you know, Alex.
Okay.
So it's totally fair game.
Okay. So, in her book, she wrote a book called Genuflect, right? So she talks about, how the elite use all this kind of like, satanic sex magic to alter the Archons, the stars, the sun, and how to like manipulate reality. So, I mean, I think stuff happens like that a lot, for sure. There is such thing as planetary magic.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, when that's why you're invoking the different Archons, like Saturn or Mercury or what have you. So yeah, the Archons do control reality for sure. But
who are the Archons, Alex?
Ooh, really good question. So they're like they're the authorities, the rulers that Paul talks about in Ephesians 6:12, right? They're the fallen angels that we're struggling against instead of like the flesh. It's just what he says, right? So then you have like, the text called the reality of the rulers is sort of like in the exegesis of that whole passage, So in fact, it quotes it. So, I mean, but you can also like connect them to like the planets, of course. I mean, they're not, they're not exactly the same, but you can connect them for sure.
Yes.
You can make a case that you can, they're sort of like interchangeable. But I mean, so even like Paul talks about like, what is it? The elements of the world, I guess, how we're not supposed to like be enslaved to elements of the world, but more like enslaved to another higher power, like, Christ. So, that's what he preaches, right? So, but I talk about that passage in my book, but I'm working on. I'll probably eventually publish it this year. It's called The Infinity Working, but I exegete, what that really means, how kind of to like, the four archangels in a way. I mean, I'm not saying that they're bad or anything, but just it is.
Oh, I don't think they're bad. I do think that people tend to overly worship the host. This is just my experience as someone who's been around the occult community. And this is not just true of magicians. This is also true of any people who are interested in kind of popular religion, New Age religion, or mysticism broadly.
Sure.
I think they just I think that there are clear prohibitions against the worship of the hosts. That's not that they're not useful. It's not that they're not helpful. I just think that people should think about it, because it's not just the angels. It's like these like I'm not a big fan of pagans, but like it's also the pagan like just because a spirit tells you to do something or says that there's something does not mean that they are that thing, right?
Right.
So, there's like I take a very anti-spiritualist approach in general, just simply because I think it's dangerous and it is very difficult to navigate, even for someone who's very experienced.
Well, I mean, I've had like experiences with like different archangels, so I'm not saying that that they're bad to like, interact with.
No, not at all. Not at all.
But like, but as far as like, worshiping them like, as if like they're, I don't know. I'm just, what I'm saying is like there's a higher, there is a
Yeah,
hierarchy.
totally.
Yeah, there is the one, there is the Godhead that, we have to, I mean, if you're if you're like a Christian, I mean, obviously you want to look at that.
No, I'm a big fan of Pico della Mirandola and a lot of the Christian Kabbalistic ideas. A lot of the a lot of the Gnostic texts are. I don't know what your opinion is. I'd love to hear it, Alex. But like, I think a lot of them are miscategorized. I think a lot of them are seen as anti-Jewish or anti-mainstream Christian, and I don't necessarily think that. I think they were like maybe popular texts or transgressive, but they're not really transgressive. A lot of the things they say are not, for me anyways, looking at them, is not very transgressive. It's kind of like, yeah, these are just interesting ideas. They're just talking about like the same things maybe that the compiled Bible is talking about, but they're talking about it in very radically different ways. It's a lot of visuals that are very, it's like I'm thinking of Thunder Perfect Mind, which is a lot of people, especially Buddhists, love this one as Tantric Buddhists in particular, because it has a lot of that kind of like Diamond Thunder wife energy. I mean, that's really what it is, even the title, right? It's like very Vajrayogini, very Scarlet Woman. So yeah, we have her as a deity, but we don't take it literally. Like when she's like, I'm a virgin, I'm a whore. We don't take it literally because it doesn't, she's post-conceptual. That's how we think of it. I'm not saying that this is the right way, but this is just how we think of it, is she's post-conceptual. So a lot of the kind of attributions that we give to her are actually our own preconceptions or our own ways of thinking that we kind of have to abandon, discard, maybe like husks on the carnal ground. Every magician is going to interact with spirits, going to interact with dakinis or angels or whatever it is. That's totally fine. I have in Tantra, it is sometimes considered that the spirits who appear in front of you are not actually the deity that it appears as, or even a related deity. It can just be things that are attracted to your sadhana. So this is just Tantra. I'm just speaking purely from my experience. But there's an over effulgence that happens, like a deity appears too brightly. It's almost like a blinding light rather than a shining light. And sometimes that is often considered to be a sign that maybe the spirit is not exactly what it says it is. I'm just offering my experiences. This is like just purely conceptual, like people can take however they want.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like the inherent danger of like, all like ceremonial magic, because some people just not always sure they're talking to who they say, it's like,
Yeah,
like
100%.
a called catfishing, I guess. But I mean, but something like really intense happens that you kind of view maybe it is them, like say like Michael, for example. I mean, maybe he really is Michael. I don't know.
No, absolutely. And I'm not discounting. You have to remember that I am Buddhist. So my thinking is always going to have elements of like that sort of non-theistic. I have a non-theistic tendency, I guess you could say. And like I tend to take it more, it's your consciousness, it's your will, it's your bodhicitta, your love, and you kind of like shoot it as an arrow, like the daughter. And that is what sort of sets forth the spark through the paths.
Right.
That's a very Buddhist, maybe even a little Dzogchen, even though I don't practice Dzogchen, but it's a little bit like that. It's kind of like a little free, a little weird, a little wild. And that's just a very Buddhist way, but it's not necessarily a ceremonial magic way. So I totally get that. And I didn't mean to derail you, Alex, because I actually had some follow-up questions for you about Archons. Now, something that I've considered on this show is that maybe the Archons are simply men who may or may not have memories of the past or past lives, or they think they have memories of past lives. It doesn't mean that they have them or that those memories are even real, but they could think they do, or a destiny or karma. I just wanted to see what you think of that.
Oh, like Archons being just simply just, flesh and blood people.
Yes.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, for sure. I mean, you see that like, Caesar could be like an Archon, So I mean, like, Jesus talks about the rulers, So like there's like in Matthew, he talks about how um about giving we're supposed to like render unto Caesar, I guess. And I think in Matthew, Jesus talks about that. But there's like a Gnostic like hermeneutic with that as well.
Why don't you get into that, Alex? People would be really interested to hear.
Yeah, so I talk about all that in a book that I put together. It's called "The Laurel Turns Green." So I have an article about that. It's called "Render unto Caesar, Paying the Last Penny." Um, but so here I'll just like read you something from Matthew. Let's see here. So this is from Matthew. It says Matthew 22, 15 to 20, no, 15 to 22. So it says, then the Pharisees went and plotted to entrap him in what he said. So they sent their disciples to him, along with the Herodians, saying, Teacher, we know that you are sincere and teach the way of God in accordance with truth, and show difference to no one. For you do not regard people with partiality. Tell us then, what do you think, it is lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not? But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, why are you putting me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the coin used for the tax. And they brought him a denarius. Then he said to them, whose head is this, and whose title? They answered, the emperor's. Then he said to them, give therefore to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's. And they heard this, and they were amazed, and they left him and went away. So, I mean, yeah, there's like a Gnostic like hermeneutic to that. Now going back to what you said about the memory thing. So, are you saying like people who are like archonic in a way? They have like different memories? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, they have you could say the flesh and blood people, certain flesh and blood people may have an archonic consciousness.
Oh,
Like Esoteric, like that's how we would describe it in Tantra.
yeah.
Like one has an Esoteric consciousness or even a Devic consciousness, even from the gods. Because in Buddhism, obviously, that's not always desirable to be like a god because the gods also have their desires. It's very dialectical, right? Like there's sort of like they are the cause of the Asuras. The Asuras don't just arise by themselves. No, they arise from the sins and desires of the gods.
So all this kind of makes me think of the movie Dark Shitty. If you ever watched that movie.
Yes.
So like in that movie, they're basically the rulers are depicted as like vampire, like almost like they're cloned vampires, but they're like it turns out they're just parasites in these dead clones, I guess. And they're just like kind of like manipulating this little cosmic zoo that they have just to like spoilers. You haven't seen the movie, but you can watch it on Amazon Prime, but it's there if you haven't. But anyway, so in that movie, it's they have this little cosmic zoo. It's almost like on like a flat kind of like a flat ship or something. It's really bizarre, but the main character, he realizes like they realize that he has the ability to like manipulate reality, so they're always like putting their hosts, their victims in this constant state of like wiping their memories and putting them in different situations just to like see what they're trying to like figure out what the soul is. So they try to like and use that soul for their own magic, I guess, to their survival. Kind of like they're kind of like sucking the loose out of you. You ever heard of that concept?
I was on a recording with Heidi Love. I don't know if you are familiar with her. She is a former Mormon, but she actually has a very good knowledge of Solomonic magic, like a very impressive sort of like body of she knows. She can tell you even what planets belong to what or what pentacles belong to what planets, like from sight. Like I can do that. But it's like, like I read that book for years. So it makes sense for me, but she just knows it from Mormonism. So she talked exactly like what you're saying. She said it's kind of like what they're doing in the lower temple,
Mhm.
sort of like going through the performance of the ritual, but what they're doing in the higher part of the temple, the upper parts, is their loosh harvesting. And she meant more like the upper highest echelon, not
Mhm.
not necessarily even a physical architectural like higher level temple, but in just in a metaphysical way, they are higher in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can think of like the different planets as being kind to the archons for sure. Like, Saturn would be like one of the higher archons, the highest archon really. Um,
That's interesting.
yeah. So like, Yaldabaoth kind of connects to him. Saturn, of course. Um, but I think there's like let me read a quote here, just because there's a dude, his name is Tommy Truthful, but he has like a quote that I want to read out. But it's really, I think it connects what we are talking about right now. So he goes, the Matrix is a parasitic system designed to siphon your energy, your loosh, to fear, doubt, and suffering. Every moment you question your own worth, it grows stronger, feeding on the negativity you emit. But the glitch in the system is self-awareness. When you love yourself fully, you unplug from its control, cutting off its supply of energy. By embracing your authenticity, you become the anomaly, disrupting the cycle and inspiring others to wake up and reclaim their infinite power. So, yeah, I think that's definitely true. But,
No,
but
I think that his main points, like obviously so
yeah,
we don't have a essential self. That's how we don't think of it like that.
right.
But I agree with what he's saying in the Luciferic sense is like you need to take the reins of your free will. You need to ask yourself what that looks like, what that is, and you have to do something with it.
Sure, sure.
Friction is praxis, right?
Mhm.
So it's like, what are you doing to spiritually level up?
Mhm.
So I
For sure.
appreciate it. I appreciate it from that angle.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, like in Buddhism, it's all about, emptying yourself, but like Gnosticism is a little bit different, it's all about
We still,
wholeness.
we value the will a
Mhm.
lot more than people think,
Okay.
especially Tantric Buddhism.
Okay.
So, I mean, it is like it's not, you still have consciousness. It's just like you're skillful about where you apply it,
Mhm.
just like a magician would be.
Okay. No, I'm still studying Buddhism, so, I'm definitely not an
Oh,
expert.
yeah, I get this criticism a lot is like that would be, I mean, it is sorcery. It considers itself a sorcery religion.
Mhm.
Differently, right? It's just
Yeah.
like we just apply the points differently and understand the system a little differently from a maybe different, more Eastern or more Dharmic or kind of way or Himalayan way. But
Yeah.
really the same. It's very similar.
Yeah. So I want to read a little bit from this article I wrote. So it does connect to what I said earlier, or what you were, talking about the archons, right? So, here's what I wrote. It goes, in Irenaeus' Against Heresies, we read about the Christian Gnostics and how they saw Jesus' words about paying the last penny to Caesar, in which they interpret to mean that their initiates must experience every sort of action, whether it be through sin or holiness, while alive in the world, so that they may be eventually released back to God above the creators of this world, being the archons and the demiurge. So in essence, the Gnostic must learn to master every aspect of his reality while experiencing everything, quote unquote, as much as possible in his life and perhaps in other lives, as the Carper creations taught a form of reincarnation to escape it and its coming judgments. Um, and then I quote, Irenaeus. He's a really interesting guy. Obviously he's like, an Orthodox church father. So yeah, if you want to, investigate Gnosticism, definitely want to read him. But he's very, combative against the Gnostic heresy, obviously. But if you want to read like the history of that, I mean, yeah, you definitely want to check him out for sure. But I mean, there's other church fathers like Hippolytus and Epiphanius. I mean, hey, I love the church fathers, but they obviously they have a very negative view on Gnosticism. But it's fun.
Well, it's interesting because I think you may have made the case throughout your work that there are streams of esoterica in many of the sects of the church fathers.
For sure. I mean, like the church. I mean, it's like you can think of it as like a meeting place of like heaven and earth, right? Like the dead and the living sort of like meet together. Like I'm talking about like the original apostolic church. So and I think a lot of the Gnostic groups they have like sort of like a similar kind of view on their their churches as well.
Yeah,
for sure. So Gnosticism is like it was. I mean, it might be pre-Christian, I think, but
I think John Lash Lamb made that argument. I don't agree with that personally, but I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, so I think like it connects to like the Mandaeans. If you look at their religion, I think they very well might be pre-Christian, but I mean because they kind of view like they do view John as their Messiah, right? John the Baptist.
Yeah.
So they view like Jesus like this evil sorcerer and usurper of the Mandaean faith. So. And they were like very much into like baptismal rituals and stuff like that. But I mean, they're definitely not Christian. But I mean, you can sort of like I do suspect that it might be pre-Christian. But that's just my opinion. If you look at them, but they have like a very like Gnostic theology and cosmology. But now. Going back to like the earthly ruler kind of concept you're talking about, like I guess you could connect to like the Illuminati, I guess. But then now here's what Paul says about all this too. So he goes, here's what I wrote. It says here, now Caesar is what we call an earthly ruler. In Romans 13:4, Paul states that these earthly rulers and your governments are God's servants. So he goes, for the one in authority is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. They are God's servants, agents of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. But Jesus sort of like contradicts it a little bit. So he goes, in John, he goes, my kingdom is not of the world. It is, if it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders, but now my kingdom is from another place. So, but Paul says that the earthly government authorities are God's servants. So Jesus says that the earthly government authorities are in opposition to Jesus' servants. So why would Jesus' servants be fighting God's servants? So then I talk about how the Gospel of Luke kind of connects to this. She says that the Gospel of Luke says that the earthly rulers and governments are Satan's servants. So it says like the devil led up to high place. It showed Jesus that all the kingdoms belong to him, right? That he's gonna give authority to Jesus if he worships him, right? But but in Paul, see this is where like I get sort of like where it gets confusing with Paul, right? Because he says like sort of like contradictory things, but but there is like a deeper context if you like really like study him for sure. But like also like if you read like 1 Corinthians, Paul talks about like the demonic rulers, the rulers of the heavens. So how like they conspired to crucify Christ, right? But really, when they crucified Christ, is really like the beginning of their downfall. So like Colossians talks about like disarming the powers and the authorities, and how like Jesus made a spectacle of them through like to the cross, like because he triumphed death, right? He triumphed hell, so he resurrected himself because the Orthodox Jesus is God. So anyway, but yeah, it's all really interesting.
That's
Yeah,
from the Orthodox view is that Jesus is God. It's a little different than the Catholic view,
right.
right? And it actually corresponds to more of certain Gnostics, maybe not the ones that we're talking about, but there is a strain of Gnosticism that does prefer that sun archetype that really
Oh, for sure.
a lot of emphasis there. And so I just think it's interesting. And I have noticed a lot of, I'm not calling anyone out, but there's a lot of esoteric sort of nods right in superficial orthodoxy. Like right at face value, there's a lot of esoterica.
Mm-hmm.
For anyone who's like me, who doesn't know that much about orthodoxy, but has maybe a little bit of knowledge about Christian esotericism and Kabbalah, is I can see there's something.
Mm-hmm.
I understand it or not, probably not. But no, I definitely think it's very deep. It's a very interesting theology. Um, it's interesting in Tantric Buddhism. There is the old school prefers the sun, the diamond thunder sun is how it's described, or the adamantine sun. But then the later schools, the Sarma schools, tended to sort of phase out that practice. They didn't carry it with them as much. It sort of changed the cosmology, and the sort of locus point or the focus point changed. So I just think that's interesting that it's kind of a reoccurrent character, and you see it in the theosophy a lot with the Kumara, and obviously in Mahayana Buddhism, you see this idea for Maitreya or the Kumara, and then in the Kalki Purana, you have this kind of idea of this hero. But it's to chunk something you said before, it's kind of nebulous. Like you don't always know how it's expressed.
Right.
A lot of things expressed at Hode or Mercury are hard to give a proper name to, and I think that's why a lot of people get confused about that kind of gender and all the different the things that arise at Hode just tend to be very complicated, or are not.
Yeah. So Hode is like the connects to which the hermit, right?
Or
So
like Mercury, like it has there's the devil card if you're using the tarot. There's the Hanged Man to connect to Mars. And then there's another one. I'm terrible at tarot, Alex. I apologize.
no, I'm still studying it, so no, I'm definitely not an expert on by any means. But I mean, but I am like the symbolism of the tarot is really interesting.
Yes.
If you decode it,
Yeah, it corresponds a lot. Like for me, just having some experiences, you can see, even though I don't know the tarot barely at all, you can see that there are color similarities, that there are conceptual ideas in the Hebrew letter, there are iconographic similarities to how the tantric ideas of thinking about it would be, like the star card, and how like the goddess of Venus or Netzach, she wears like an 8-pointed star above her, on her crown. And so that's exactly the same thing in Tantra. And she's kind of the fortress. That's even her name. Durga is like the fortress. It means fortress, just like Netzach. So you can see that, like, and she's diamond. So she's like a diamond, like she's like eternal, impenetrable. There's a lot of similarities. So I'm just saying, like, yeah, it's really good to learn tarot, but I'm just really bad at it. So just call it.
No, it's okay. So like the tarot, it does connect to like, the tree of life, of course. This book I have in front of me is called Pathworking by Ted Andrews. He does connect the tarot to each Sephiroth and the different paths they're supposed to do. So basically with like pathworking, you're supposed to do like a different meditation for each like Sephira and each path to like, get to Ketha, right? Or then you're eventually supposed to like cross the abyss and all that stuff, and that's a whole other podcast in itself. But really, like ultimately, you're supposed to like achieve the knowledge and conversation with the Holy Guardian Angel, when you're working at the Tree of Life. So that's right.
Well, I mean, it's like I'm not correcting you at all, Alex. I'm just are different mediums, right? Like even even someone that you worked with, they have different ideas of where the terminus is.
Mhm.
And so you also have, like, just like in Kabbalah, you have like the different ideas. Is there a tree of death as well? Is there an 11th sphere, death?
Mhm.
Right? Like, or is it even its own sphere? Because Ramek
Mhm.
said it existed, but he posited that it wasn't its own Sephira. It was just like
Mhm.
quality of all the Sephira at the 5th
Mhm.
density. So, and then Lurius obviously said, yes, it's actually a hidden Sephira that you have to, that's where you cross the abyss. So I think that that's a really interesting idea. You kind of have competing theories of magic or competing theories of the universe, even. Right. That goes along with something you said at the very beginning, like how people, or whatever you want to say, them, nebulous, in air quotes, them, use sort of like reality manipulation techniques. But what is, and magical techniques to augment reality, you could say?
Right.
Rare reality, anyways. But then you could also say, what is the best and easiest magical working? It's the story, it's fiction.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
just think that's really interesting as well. And mythology, history, art, it's all a kind of fiction, even if it's true.
Mhm. For sure, for sure. And now you mentioned like the tower, how it connects to like a specific Buddhist deity. Which one was it again? I forgot. I think you mentioned it. You just mentioned it, but kind of slipped my mind.
Oh, the
Um,
tower.
yeah.
Okay, so the tower, I didn't say that, but I said justice
Okay.
has that would be like where I would place the Nuria.
Oh, okay. I thought you were
But
going to
the
do.
tower, I actually
Okay.
did speak about this with Robbie Marks and Nick.
Mhm.
And so I did say that, like, there's something in that kind of Nimrod mythology that reminds me of a deity called Havajra.
Okay.
So Havajra has 16 arms.
Mhm.
But I just thought that does, I don't know, maybe you heard me say that yesterday, pre-recording. I'd forgotten. I apologize, Alex. But no, but I said, but yes, justice would go with Nuria, the daughter.
Ah, okay, okay. Gotcha, gotcha. Um, so and then now the Aeon of daughter, that's interesting. So there's like this one theologian talks about this, how it's sort of like there's three different ages that
Mhm.
it's like encompass, human history. Just like there's like the age of the Father, there's the age of the Son, and there's the age of the Holy Spirit. Um, God, and let me look that up here. But I know it's just one theologian talks about that. I think it's a Catholic one.
Well, that
But
would make sense, right? Because it's a very Trinitarian view.
right, right. So there's like the third age. They call it the third age. So yeah, I'm looking on my site here. So I'll just quote something from my website. It says here, the three ages, as propounded by the authors of the Babylonian Talmud, refer to the chaotic age before the law, to the age of the law of Torah, and to the future messianic age, which is still to come. In the Middle Ages, this thought clearly resounded in the teachings of, oh, here we go, Joachim of Fiore, whose idea was not that history was divided into three ages: the age of the Father, the Son, or the Spirit, which is still to come, and in which the new religious orders would inaugurate a new spiritual church here on earth. Um, yeah, I'm sorry. It is the idea. I'm sorry. I take that back. So sorry, I read it wrong. But anyway, you can, yeah, but you can read on my website. It's called theani.com. So you can look at that. I wrote an article about all this stuff actually.
Awesome. I'll put it in the show notes. No problem, Alex.
Yeah, yeah. So it's called, I wrote an article. It's called, let me pull it up here. It's called The Cathar Prophecy. The Cathar Prophecy is Lion Gates and the Age of Wormwood. So I kind of suspect that's the age we're really in. I mean, yeah, where there's the Aeon of the daughter and the Horus.
I think that's the
I,
same thing, to be honest.
yeah, or the Aeon of Wormwood. Yeah, Crowley talks about that.
Right. And I think that you and I spoke about this privately. Is that I think that there's a confusion, and how I spoke about it a little earlier. I said there's a confusion of what is expressed at Hode. In my opinion, Hode really has three expressions into the material world, or the world that we observe. So there's like a Mercury, Sirius A, and Sirius B. So there's the Prince, the daughter, and the dragon,
Mm-hmm.
all Ketu. So we have 9 planets in tantric astrology rather than the traditional 7. So I don't think that there's a paradox, however. I think actually you can understand the more Western Hermeticism or the Western like esoteric traditions, and you understand what they're talking about through like a Binah or Saturn, like through the ending myth.
Mm-hmm.
And then you sort of like come out into this more outer planetary, like more radical, more weirder sort of carnal ground on the other side, because that's what would happen is that your flesh would be like kind of stripped away, you could say, from Binah. You're traveling to Hokmah,
Mm-hmm.
kind of becoming like the smoke of the world, like sort of like not really within it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where a lot of people get, I think that's where you start to really see the dragon other than Hod. So when you're on the outer 2, Sephira, like when you're at Keter and Hokmah, but when you're at the sort of like the traditional 7 planets as they relate to the Sephira, you aren't, you don't know, you're still inside the black cube, maybe you could say. You haven't like kind of like expressed outwards yet, so you don't really know what's there. So how could you even describe it?
Right. So, I mean, I guess you can ask, what's the point of even doing all this stuff in the first place? So, well, I mean, if you're into mysticism or magic, I mean, it is it is a very useful tool. So, I mean, if you're supposed to like, it enhances your, your light body, So if you get a pillar, for example.
Yeah, you're speaking my language, Alex. Like this is right? Like it's very Dzogchen. It's very like rainbow body, clear light body. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's supposed to, so it's basically spiritual self-development, right?
Yes.
So
That's what we're here for.
yeah. So for sure. So it does enhance, your concentration, does stretch, improve your imagination. It gives you the ability to read symbolism much more clearer, it does awaken different hidden aspects of your consciousness. It does it does give you greater control over your animal impulses.
Yeah, that's what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, for sure. So I still struggle with with all
Everybody does.
with lust but it's
that's the hardest cliche to conquer.
For sure.
It's actually the cliche of lust. So I think everyone struggles with that one. That's not, I'm just empathizing with you, Alex, rather than diminishing it. I'm just saying that everybody struggles with that cliche. That's not, it's by far the hardest. So
for sure. For sure. Yeah. I mean, all these, like, we call like, the sins, that's definitely like a klipa for sure.
Yeah. That's what I'm, klipa, like a poison or a husk, like something useful to contain an idea, but not necessarily useful to engage in it.
Right. So I mean, for me, like, this stuff, it is like, it is there to, I mean, you can think of it as a way to improve your life, for sure.
Yes,
for sure.
There's obviously a material benefit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
but it's the material benefit in doing the practices for the higher purpose rather than doing like a spell here and there. I think that's the real difference. I think that people start to see the real benefit, like the real material benefit, like your ability to bring things, destroy things, remove obstacles, increase wealth, pacify illness, like all those things. They're actually, like you're saying, they're kind of like, it's like putting a magnifying lens on like the light so you can sort of like precisely focus it onto those things. But it's not like you're not doing little works here and there. You're kind of like, it's in the broader implication of doing like greater practices.
Right. So, I mean, there is a material, benefit to all this as well, for sure. No,
I just want to say that because a lot of people think that like, oh, like the high magic is like, it's like it's very wishful thinking. It's very utopian and a lot of daring. When I was like 19, 20, I definitely thought that. I was like, what are they talking about? Like, I just want money and love and success and
Right.
all that stuff. Like, I wasn't like thinking like, oh yeah, what are the broader implications?
Sure. Like everything's all airy fairy or what have you.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's really not. It's actually the total opposite.
Yeah, I know. You're supposed to like ground yourself, really. So, I mean, these all this stuff that you're supposed to like, grounding yourself in your reality. Really, it's not air fair at all. Now people in your life can like force you to like turn to all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Which is the case with me. Like I won't get too much into detail, but I had like I had like a really bad relationship that sort of like forced me to turn to all this stuff. So maybe that's why I had to experience it. So
well, it's tests and trials, right? Tests and
Right.
trials. This is something that I've been thinking about a lot, and I spoke to Robbie about this and other people, Patrick, and various other people that I've had on. I can't even remember. A low IQ moron. I have interesting friends, but so the monomyth does not really fit the magician that well.
Mhm.
There are elements of it that correlate to his journey. If you want to say that he has either one or multiple expressions of a journey on that sort of, we'll call it the monomythic Sephira.
Mhm.
But the magician kind of has his own paths that he must take. And I think that that trial and tribulation thing is very much more part of like it's so overused, and I'm not using it because I like think I'm a shaman or anything, but there is that like shamanic illness. But
Mhm.
people tend to think that that's like very literal. Like they think like I must have a physical, chronic, or acute illness, but it doesn't necessarily mean that once you understand. It can actually mean like a Milarepa situation. Milarepa is like a very important Buddhist teacher, thinker, and Mahasiddha, and also the founder of the Karma Kagi school. So, or he's credited at least. So he kind of had life difficulty where he didn't have physical difficulty or illness. He just had like a very difficult family. So he turned to sorcery, black magic, to kind of resolve it. But then he realized like, oh shit, I fucked up my karma.
Yes. Right. Yeah, I mean, like what karma? I mean, karma just means cause and effect. So if you're
Yeah. I mean, a lot of what karma is something that is mutable. I think that's what a lot of people forget is that Buddhism is not fatalistic. It's all about like, what do you want to do with it? Do you want to like start working on your karma now?
Sure.
Quit.
Hey. Yeah. So it's like if you eat a lot of candy and
That's right.
ice cream, you'll get diabetes.
That's right.
They're right,
Too,
too,
you get like a little pung. That's how they say it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get a little chubby. So yeah, you don't do that. So you just know that like you don't indulge in the things that are going to have a negative end result. This is like it's the simplest, easiest way to explain what karma is. But then it gets more complicated because you have like your thoughts actually matter. Your speech actually matters. Like all of these things at the different levels of reality matter. And then also how they interact with them in the outside world. For sure. Put them all together at the same time. There's a very like a Trinitarian kind of concept that we were talking about before, like a single pointed thing made up of three pillars or three you could say razors of the truth.
Right. So and even like people in your life, you can think of them as like sort of like guideposts in your journey of initiation or self-initiation.
Yes.
So you have all these prayers and meditations to like counteract all the negative effects of your karma, I guess. So that's what they have as the Psalms, right?
Yes.
So, but anyway, but we said earlier, like, so I mean, where are we going where are we going with all this? I
Okay,
mean,
well, I think that we are having a
where are
broader
we going with all
discussion
this?
of the contours of Gnosticism, and just in general, and what that looks like, and maybe modern magic is,
Okay.
even though Tolima says it's like neo or Gnosticism or whatever, but it's much more broad than Tolima. It's much more, the canon is much more diverse, we could say. So yeah, so all modern magic, you could say, is a kind of Gnosticism.
Yeah, right,
But it all has different, like, kind of ways of thinking about itself.
right, right. So, yeah, I mean, I guess what I was trying to say is like all these systems are like basically the exploration of the self, you know.
Yes.
So I mean, yeah, that's what I was trying to say. So like, so basically, you're just. I know it sounds kind of funny, but you're like basically training yourself to be selfish, but not like in a negative sense, but like in a positive sense. You're supposed to develop yourself, then you can help others, you know? So,
Well, yes, because if you can't control your own emotions, how can you control your outside world? So that's like
right.
first, that's like step one, right? It's like you were talking about, like, what subjugates us. So in Dharma, we don't think of ourselves necessarily as subjugated, but we take refuge
Right.
under the three gems, which can mean different things in Tantra. It doesn't necessarily mean what people think it means.
Yeah.
So that's the idea, is like you kind of like, you relinquish yourself to the higher power or whatever the higher practice is for us. And then you would say, okay, I'm going to, like, I'm going to tame like this poison of the mind. I'm going to tame, like, lust is one, but not the only one.
Sure.
Wrath is a big one.
Sure.
Ignorance is one. Greed is another. And I mean, it's very similar to the kind of more Christian or Abrahamic worldview. So it's just like you have to undertake like the sort of subjugation of each of those cliches, and then the practices are to help you do.
Oh, that's right. So, yeah, I'm beginning to realize, you know, that all this stuff really extends to your entire life, you know?
Yes. The greatest ritual is the one you live out day to day.
That's right. So,
Not
yeah,
the
and
master magician.
right. So really, I mean, that's really the argument of this book that I'm going to publish soon here. Is called The Infinity Working, and which you can find that on my Substack, which I mentioned earlier. But in that thing I'm writing, it's like I pretty much say that, you know, creation is like is a ritual, really.
Yeah.
It's a ritual, you know.
Yeah.
Itself is a ritual.
Existence itself is a ritual. And we are
No.
existing in time and space through three separate, like, stages of form or consciousness: mind, body, speech.
So
Learn to align those things, and then every moment is truly a ritual. Not the candles you burn in the basement, you know, like, it's way more than that. It's actually not about that. That's actually that's not even an important part of it.
yeah, and you know, and I wrote this book called The Laurel Turns Green, which is like I just kind of like well, actually, so going back to what you said earlier about now, we were talking about the Aeon of the Daughter, which Aeon we're in.
Yeah.
So right, so I think it's also the age of the stars. I think we're also in as well. So okay, so what is what the age of the star exactly? Well, that is if you look at the tarot card of the star, it does connect to that too, which is about here. Let me just pull it up here 1 second. I wish I had this prepared. Let me just pull it up my book here. Here's what I wrote. I go 1 second. Let me pull it up. Oh, geez. Oh, here we go. So go. In this tumultuous period of unveiling, it is important to know that where we came from collectively and where we are evolving into. So I do believe that we entered the age of the star. The star in the tarot represents universal blessings and harmony. So I'm hopefully we can, you know, reap those benefits.
Yeah.
Even though, yeah, there's there's the age of the one word, there's age of Horus, but hopefully you can reap the benefits of the star. It's
Well,
most,
I
I
totally
guess.
agree. Like, this is like I'm very into the pink ray. People have talked about this. That's sort of what led me to you, I guess, is like this idea of like the pink ray. People would be like, you need to check out like this person's work, this person's work. And because I was talking about it without even really knowing that anyone else was talking about it. So it was this very interesting sort of coincidence. I was just talking about it from a tantric idea. More than like really like it wasn't like a hermetic idea at all. It was like completely from tantra.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't even have a conception that it existed. And like how we describe pink is very similar to like how other researchers have described pink. So I was just like, wow, that's very interesting. I like to look at iconography. So you can find a lot of Buddhist iconography with this kind of pink, or sometimes it looks red, but if you understand the text, it really is pink. So yeah, there's just like I think I love the idea of the Aeon of the stars or the age of the stars. I think that there is a Zoroastrian idea that you've gotten to this whole recording, is that who is the Archon, like the planets or the stars? This is a common divergence throughout religion, throughout Central Asia, and more broadly in the world. Are the planets archons? Are they minor archons? Are the stars archons? Are they minor archons? Buddhism would say that they're both archonic in a sense, but in and of themselves, they're not, they can be maneuvered around if you so choose.
God. Now, what I said earlier about, the Clephas is like, of lust or whatever. So like now I'm looking at this book by Ted Andrews. So he talks about uh how each path also connects to like the virtues and vices, right?
Yes.
So he goes from Malkuth to Yesod, he goes discrimination and independence, it would be like a virtue, avarice and idleness would be like a vice, of course. Let me see. Now, Malkuth and Netzach, he goes, avarice and lust and purity would be like the vice, and unselfishness would be like the virtue. So,
Or that would let her go, right? It would be the
right.
appearance of Babylon before you, or the Scarlet Woman, or whatever you want to call her. But then you wouldn't place your preconception upon her. She could appear to you in any way that she chooses, but you're not going to lust after her. You're not going to wish for anything, and you're not going to perform any kind of ritual magic to make her under your will. That's how I would interpret that. That's how I interpret that relationship with Netzach. It's like the kind of desires we place upon her, she loves that. So once we stop placing our desires upon it, we can manifest things through that more precisely, but it's also not keeping it so trapped, densified in karma, densified in like that clipolithic layer. I don't know. That's just an idea. You can take it or leave it, Alex. I just was on awe for that.
No, it's fascinating. I mean, everything you told me, I think it's really interesting to me. I mean, I'm still a student. I don't consider myself a master by any means, but I mean, I've uncovered different things here and there, but I mean, I guess I wouldn't really call myself like, the master magician, I guess, but
No, but I think you're a very thorough researcher. I have enjoyed our multiple conversations. I really enjoyed our discussion today. I'm going to just open the door if you ever want to come back, if you want to come back to do a part 2 or discuss your book. Your next book. I mean, you're obviously welcome. And I hope that you do. And I hope that you liked coming on and kind of having a discursive discussion about like very esoteric, very Gnostic, very niche maybe topics, but I think really interesting.
For sure. I just want to make one last point here. So the age of the stars, like you can sort of like connect that to Chesed, and then like the age of like Horus, or the age of Worm would be like, Rivera, so you have these two different powers, or like we're kind of like in between, so you're supposed to like master both of them,
Yes.
in a balance. So otherwise, the universe will collapse.
Well, this is a very interesting idea, right? That the Etchesed and Rivera have to be in dialectical synthesis at all times, like
Right.
infinity, like a figure eight.
For sure. So,
They
and then,
balance each other, not overpower.
right. So that's like the path of the true magician, it's
Okay.
middle pillar, the middle, like it's the balanced one, the pillar of mildness, I guess, right?
Yes.
So,
Well, there's also something interesting about the Aeon of the Daughter, is that she is the. So it said there's another way to understand Lamed Mem Dalet, which is the letter that appears in Path 22,
Mhm.
is that it is the heart of Eve, but in this case, it's actually referring to the heart of mercy. So there's another interesting saying that correlates with this is that the spark of Hod is the heart of Hesed.
Mhm.
So, but that refers to the same thing, like the daughter is the heart of Eve or is the heart of mercy, because like the Hod is the eighth sphere, right?
Mhm.
And Hesed is the fourth sphere,
Mhm.
and it's infinite in its capacity for loving kindness.
Yeah.
You can take of it infinitely. The lightning is always there, like pomegranates in a garden of, or an orchard, we'll say, of trees.
It's right. Yeah. Isn't there like a book called Pomegranates or something?
Yes, there's two books. There's the Garden of Pomegranates, and then there's the Orchard of Pomegranates.
Okay.
Both
Yeah,
are very good. If people find them, very good books.
Yeah. Yeah, I have the middle pillar book from Regardie. I'm still like reading through that. It's just so much material. Yeah, I may would just wind up creating like a Patreon just to break down everything, for people to subscribe. I don't know. We'll see.
I
Mm.
highly support that. I will include all your links in the show notes, and if you want to plug your Substack and your Twitter or your Instagram or whatever socials you're doing, or anything else, your site, obviously, please do so.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to my website, theaeoni.com. You can just go there. A lot of my older material, which you can find online. Now, some of it is behind a paywall. I may just drop the paywall BS and just put everything out for free, I guess. But for the Substack, I mean, that's a lot of that stuff is behind a paywall, so you do have to subscribe if you want to read all that stuff. But I am planning on implementing more exclusive content to Substack and maybe create a Patreon. We'll see. I don't know. But you can also find me on X at the Megas Aeon. Now I put my account on private for now. I think there's some other stuff that's happening, but but if you want to add me on there, you can do so. You can see what I'm up to. But you can also go on my Facebook page. You have the Aeon I Facebook page. You can subscribe if you want to. It's on my website. Let me see what's another. I do have a YouTube channel, but I haven't really updated it. But you can watch a lot of my older videos if you're into that kind of stuff. And yeah, and again, yes, I am. I will publish a book called The Infinity Working the next few months here. So I'll see how that turns out. So
Awesome.
interesting stuff.
Well, thank you so much, Alex. I hope you had fun at least. And we took a little bit of a wild ride conversationally, but I think it is interesting because I think that you have some very interesting and different ideas about Gnosticism, and so do I. So I think it's like very interesting to put those two kind of ideas, sort of like two people who are both radical and out there in the same, in conversation with each other. So I think that's kind of interesting and dynamic, maybe. So
Definitely. Yeah. I really definitely enjoyed the conversation, Jen.
good. Okay, good. And then no, you are if you want to come back and be future saint, please do. And yeah, that's great. So I will include everything in the show notes. Please check out Alex. We made it work. So this is happening, and I'm really glad that it did. Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, great. Thanks, Alex, and have a great night, okay?
You too. Bye-bye.
Vegeta, thanks.
For what? I should be thanking you, Kakarot.
Nah, what do you mean? I loved every minute. Goodbye, my friend.